Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emergence and Empowerment Global Conference, in which you will be immersed in the wisdom, expertise, and breakthrough inspiration from 25 radical leaders, change agents, and influencers. My name is Jocelyn Mercado, and I'm your host and the co-producer of this event. And you are invited here to attend, to dive in deep, and to gain a profound understanding of the secrets, insights, and pathways that we can collectively create in order to move through our current challenging times and birth a new way forward. Prepare to be revolutionized and supported, body, mind, and soul. You will learn potent ways that you can expand your leadership and actively participate in accelerating humanity's awakening and manifesting our true potential for a bright and vibrant future. And today I am super excited to welcome Veronica Anderson. Welcome, Veronica. Thank you so much for being a part of this event.
Thank you, Jocelyn. It's such an honor to bring my wisdom and insights to this panel. It's very exciting.
So glad to have your expertise here in this space. Yes. Well, let me share your bio with everybody so they can all get to know you. Veronica Anderson is an energy healer and architect who is birthing a new way of being in love with the earth. Her practice of permaculture includes listening to the earth mixed with teachings of mindfulness to develop sustainable projects and cultures. Veronica offers trauma-informed meditative practices and is focused on building regenerative internal and external structures and spaces. She is an entrepreneur, she lives in Costa Rica, and she mentors sensitive people in leadership roles. Veronica is a pioneer in the emerging field of geodesign and brings extensive knowledge of sustainability, geographic information systems, and architectural design to create truly resilient urban ecosystems. She has participated in both for-profit urban development projects, nonprofit sustainability work, and public sector resiliency plans. As Director of Geodesign at the Institute for Conscious Global Change, Veronica was invited to speak at the UN to support the integration of governance, science, and design to help achieve the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. Wow, that's amazing, Veronica. She has also served on the board of advisors for BioPhilly, a nonprofit which is working to make Philadelphia a part of the Global Biophilic Cities Network. Recently, Veronica developed the master plan for the UPeace Integral Climate Park, a joint project of the Earth Charter, University for Peace, Huetar Indigenous Tribe, and local municipality, which demonstrates resiliency and regeneration across scales. She is building a community of creatives and visionaries birthing the new earth. Join her at veronicasanadora.com and as at Guardian of the Sacred on Instagram, and we will post those links and names below so you can easily link through to her work. And Veronica and I recently met in Costa Rica, and I'm just so honored to have you here with us today, Veronica.
Thank you.
Yeah, so your topic today is Deep Design, Inner and Outer Architecture for a New Earth. And so can you tell us what is the role of architects and architecture in today's modern world?
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. The role of architecture is very much underappreciated in our society. Back in the 1920s, so about 100 years ago now, people would talk about architecture as an art, and it was recognized as an important part of our culture and society. Today, sometimes we talk about sustainability, and the truth is architects have really forgotten their responsibility to our society and the culture that we all live within. And the buildings and spaces and cities, the towns and villages that we live in, they really inform the way that we think and treat one another, the way we relate to ourselves, and ultimately the way we relate to the earth. So if we're here to create a sustainable relationship with our planet, and we're living inside of concrete boxes or cities with massive highways that separate neighborhoods from one another, we have to recognize that the environment we're living in isn't so much connecting us with the earth or with each other or with ourselves. And so that's the role that architecture and architects play in our society today. And at this pivotal point of, are we going to be able to sustain ourselves or not? We have about 8 years to really decide if we're going to commit to this new way of life, which is sustainable, based on many scientific projections and studies. We can utilize our architecture and our cities as a tool to create this pivot in consciousness, which is really what we're talking about today.
Wow, so powerful. And yeah, it's really moving for me. Like you said, we're living inside of concrete boxes in some cases, or working inside of square boxes with square windows, is often how I think about it. And if we think about how we human beings evolved for hundreds of thousands of years to be outdoors and to be under the dome of the sky and on the earth, and then now it's just so different, especially in cities, extremely different.
Yes, yes. There's some older cities, like if you've ever been to Rome or Paris. I haven't been to Paris, but I assume, because these cities were built before cars, and so they're designed to a human scale. And the problem with a lot of our development these days is it's created for a market scale. We design with easily replicable materials and things that are easy to get our hands on as developers and contractors, and we don't really think about the people that live in our buildings. And so we've just totally neglected our bodies, and the spaces that we live in have, like you've said, disconnected us from the sky, from the sun, from the wind, and from the earth. When was the last time any of us really got our hands dirty, unless we live on a farm? And there are so few and far between opportunities to really connect with the earth.
Yes. So next thing I want to ask you is, what is sustainability and how does that relate to architecture?
Yes. Well, sustainability is really our ability to be sustained. And that's a very simplistic definition. But when we look into our ability to be sustained and we put that as a priority in our considerations, whether it comes to investing in infrastructure or making purchases of land, if you're just a small family, or if you're a business owner, how is your business going to be able to be sustained through changes and chaos? And this is something that I, as a business owner, and many others are confronting now in this crisis that we're facing today. So sustainability is not so much an end goal. We're not going to reach a society that is sustainable and then we just stop working and that's it. We have to create a process of being able to sustain ourselves. It's a sustainability, it's a process. So when we say that we have sustainable development goals, these are targets and principles that all the countries in the world have agreed upon that we will achieve by 2030. But beyond that, we have a responsibility to take a look at our processes, whether it's development or governance or consumption, our economies, and understand that we need to be able to sustain these for the long term. So it's really taking a longer term perspective than we're used to.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like this idea of sustainability and being able to, simple things like being able to grow our own food and have access to water are really coming up for us in this global crisis right now, as we think ahead, as we think about the global impact of everything that's going on. So this is just critical for us to be exploring right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, could you tell us a bit about your architectural practice?
Yes. So my practice always starts with listening to the earth. And so I have a pretty spiritual approach to this thing of creating spaces and developing projects. But the truth is, whatever we put on the earth isn't going to be as good as what's already there, because for more than 13 billion years, this planet has been evolving and developing systems of sustenance. So what I always start with is observing what's there. And this is also a permaculture principle, which comes from the indigenous traditions of the world. And so these are the original ways that humans related to the earth and created living environments for themselves. So my practice is to listen, to really stop and be present with the ecosystems that are on the land, paying attention to the site and designing that specific context that we're working in. Something that works in Costa Rica isn't going to be the same thing that works in Philadelphia. And the same is true if it's a city in Costa Rica or the beach. Different materials are needed. So we have to really look at the microclimate of that land and then let nature do her work and appreciate the processes that are already in place and creating new systems that support existing systems and are also integrated with, for example, hydrological systems on the land. So how can the building's use of water participate in the hydrological cycle of that land? Are there rivers? What's the rain season like? And so supporting the natural processes carried out by the ecosystems so that they can then support the inhabitants or the users of that site. And finally, the overarching goal of anything I've ever done as an architect is to connect people and nature, because we can't look at humans and nature as separate systems. We are truly one with the earth. We are, from a spiritual level, the consciousness of our planet. You know, there's no life for us without the earth. Everything that we are comes from our planet. And so we really need to create structures and frameworks and systems to integrate the needs of these natural systems and our built systems into a cohesive symbiosis. And so that what people need is provided by nature and what nature needs is provided by people. And so we can really take care of the planet. This is the ultimate goal of the architecture. It's obviously going to be profitable for the owner and it's going to be prosperous for the community. All the neighbors are going to be able to have their say in the way that the project is designed, because you know the people that live there have the greatest understanding of the intricacies of their ecosystems and microclimate and biome. But this is where we get to the synarchy, where we have a balance, a symbiosis between nature and the earth. We have masculine and feminine working together in harmony, and we can get into some more details later, but that's the overview of the initial process.
I love that. I love everything that you just shared, but really thinking about the fact that, as you said, the earth has been evolving for 13 billion years. So she's got it pretty well worked out. So any way that we can be working more closely with her is like what we need to do. And also this idea of a reciprocal relationship between humans and the earth.
Yes.
It's something that through my studies of indigenous wisdom is, I mean, it's just so clear. We need to return to this ancient reciprocal relationship. And it gives me great hope to hear that we can do that through architecture.
We absolutely can, and we've always been able to. We're actually more able to than ever before. It's just the commitment that's really required and the decision to create this permanent culture. That's what permaculture means. And we're seeing this crisis response around the globe happening right now. And imagine if we responded to the crisis of climate change and our system extinction and the massive shifts taking place in the ecological systems of our planet in the way that we're responding to this health crisis at a more tangible scale, because our planet's change is a health crisis. It's just happening slower. And so we're having a harder time conceptualizing it. But this is truly where permaculture does come in to play as an important ally in our cultures and societies now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I just want to shout that from the rooftops, what you just said about what if we were treating climate change and reacting and changing the way we're operating, changing our patterns as dramatically as we are right now for this coronavirus.
Yes.
Thank you.
Maybe it's possible.
Yeah. Yes.
Even
Let's put that intention out. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, diving a little bit more deeply into your work, what do you look at when you're designing a site then, with all of this in mind that we've talked about so far?
Yes. Well, the process that I have found to be most supportive of creating this symbiosis and interconnectedness between communities and long-term sustainability in terms of materials and use of the development is to really look at the goals and the mission of the owner. Who's starting the project? What are the stakeholders' intentions? And that's where we start. So we have to get all of our design team around the table. And many times in the current days, there's a separation between, well, the landscape architect is over there and the engineers are over there, and this is where the architect sits, and we're all going to independently work. And so this integration of the whole design team around the intentions of the project is really, really essential as a starting point to create a solid vision. The visionaries today are receiving amazing, game-changing projects that are like divine downloads, pushing the limits and evolving society. And I am just so honored to be a part of those projects. There's one in Costa Rica that is a permaculture demonstration farm, and it's a longevity lifestyle learning lab. And it's just such a great celebration of life and fun and food and the way that functional medicine can affect our ability to just be healthy and have a sustainable life. So that's one example of something I take into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is, what does the community really need? And we're talking human communities and natural communities. So for example, this community really needed a veggie stand. There wasn't a place to just buy veggies. You know, there was a couple grocery stores, but in the farmers markets are only one day a week. So where could they really connect with fresh produce in this small town? So we figured out how to stack uses and provide that service while also meeting the goals of the owner, which was to create a maker village with art and culture and courses and a co-working space. And so this resiliency from multi-use spaces is really important too. And it's also a prosperous business model as far as commerce and economy are concerned. So we're talking regenerative economy as well. And of course, we have to look at the unique formation of the site. What's the topography like? How do the curves and contours of the land flow? And what are some natural features that we can celebrate? This project that I'm working on has amazing views of the national park, the Whale's Tail in Uvita here in Costa Rica. And so we look at how we can use views and rain and wind, and again, how the microclimates are interacting on the site. Because even within something as, you know, a few acres, there are different zones that are suitable for different uses. So we follow that. But most importantly, I look for ways that the project can transform social customs and create regenerative customs and a regenerative culture through the development of the site. So, for example, there are ways to heal large-scale social issues through buildings and spaces. And something called biophilia, that's the love of nature, bio, and philia means love, is teaching us about how we can create a stronger relationship between humans and nature with design. So they've done studies about biophilic designs of hospital rooms and traditional conventional hospital rooms, and the people that are in biophilic spaces, that is to say they have a window that opens, lots of sunlight, soft textures, the lines of the design inside the space are just more human scale and friendlier, they heal faster And that goes back to what you were saying earlier, Jocelyn, about how the connection to the sky and how we've just been developing under nature's care for so many years. And now we've suddenly, in the grand scheme of things, suddenly removed ourselves. And what's happening? We're getting sick, and in a lot of different ways. So another way we can transform large-scale social issues would be creating walkable cities and towns. So places where you don't need a car in order to live are my preference. I can see the town center from where I live, and I know that I can walk there in 10 minutes. And that means I don't need to own a car, and my resources are freed up for other investments that are important to my community and to myself. And I'm not burning fossil fuels. So this also gives us the time to spend more time in connection with the elements and strengthen our relationship to nature. So there are a lot of ways that we can work against capitalism and colonialism and patriarchy through our design practices, using readily available local materials like cob or wattle and daub. These are ways that we can start to affect our global economy and make it more regenerative by making sure that our development actually responds to our values as a society, which it always does. Our development and economy and everything is a reflection of who we are as a culture, as a society, as a planet. And this has always been true. So if we look around at the places in which we live and we see concrete boxes and square windows, then we could say, well, maybe we've forgotten the earth and what it means to be soft and connect with these curves that traditionally are associated with the archetype of the feminine. And that's a little snapshot.
Wow. That's incredibly powerful. And this idea of architecture, you know, helping us to actually shift societal issues by creating more health, creating, I'm sure, better mental health, many, many levels to this. That is extremely powerful.
Yes. Thank you for adding in the element of mental health, because it's really a body, mind, heart, and soul experience being inside a space.
Yes, all levels. Well, that was the next question I was going to ask you, actually. How do the places that we live affect our relationship with the earth? And I will add with ourselves, because that seems to be pretty clear from what you're saying so far.
Correct. Well, we're not separate from the earth. So as we heal our relationship to the planet, you know, where I'm sitting, I can see hundreds of trees and plants, hundreds right now. And this space is constantly inspiring me to be more creative, and the daylight is nourishing my internal systems. And so my physiology responds to this space. And the relationship that I have to the earth is so much stronger because I can walk out my door and go for a walk through the woods. And I also live in a city. This isn't a mutually exclusive, you know, cities over here and nature over here. That is what's created our distance from nature. That's why we have to have conference after conference after conference trying to create policies and programs so that we can save the earth or create sustainable governance. What's a better way to do this is just to live in harmony with nature, and we can do that inside of cities. Cities like Singapore have done a really good job bringing, they call Singapore the city in a garden. And that's a very large city. So if anybody's interested in looking up examples there of how we can bring nature into the city, that is a really potent example. And creating ecological urbanism is the term for bringing nature back into the city. And that can have a radical impact on our conscious and unconscious ways of connecting with the earth. Another way that we can do it subconsciously is with sacred geometry. So certain geometries like the flower of life have been shown to create a resonance or a vibration which affects us on a cellular level. And so designing spaces or even just art with sacred geometries, like for example, the Fibonacci sequence, which you can see in all of nature with pineapples or the shape of pine cones, you know, these ratios are in our DNA. Actually, the helix of our DNA responds to the Fibonacci sequence. So if we can, as architects, take responsibility for our, I want to say meat bags, you know, these bodies that are living and alive, and say, okay, what I'm going to design as an architect is inert, but it's going to relate to a human being which is alive, and put in elements which affect our human bodies in a conscious way, then we can return to our essence as living beings and touch and enrich our souls through our spaces on a daily basis. It doesn't need to be a luxury where you go to a church and now you feel enriched, and now it's Monday and you don't go back to that space and you just live in monotony. That's not the way that modern day humans have to live. We get to live in harmony with nature and nourishing our souls. And there's this relationship between our inner worlds and our outer worlds that architecture is sort of a signal for. And we can get a little bit more into that relationship as we go further.
Okay, wonderful. That is so fascinating about the sacred geometry. I know that, you know, sacred geometry is, you know, is all around us, and that we can kind of tap into that in meditation and in different ways. But I didn't realize that it can actually help us to feel more connected with the earth, more connected with, you know, with, I mean, and help our DNA. Like, that's really incredible. So to think about taking these spaces and shifting what is taking us out of resonance with health and with the earth, and then bringing in things like sacred geometry, that's really amazing. Yeah.
Well, if we look at the pyramids, which are an ancient architectural example, those create specific resonance within the humans that enter them. And so we can model that with our buildings, and we do model that with our buildings. You know, think about if you go into a space with a high ceiling or a space with a low ceiling, you don't even need to see anything in order to feel the effect. It's a cellular level. So we can create high vibrational spaces that actually generate well-being in people, societies, and ecosystems. That's within our power today.
Yeah, so amazing. Well, here's another very interesting question that I know you speak about. What does energy healing have to do with architecture? How do those tie together?
Powerful. Yes, I believe that all architecture and development has the ability to transform us, and holistic design is the recognition of this fact. And so this sacred geometry element is a big part of how spaces can be transformational and how we can heal ourselves with our spaces. So energy healing isn't so much healing our energy, because energy can't be created or destroyed, which means we can't own it either. Energy is everything. It's always flowing through us. What we can do is heal our capacity to transmit and receive energy. And a lot of times we experience trauma as a child or an adult, which somehow modulates or modifies our ability to be in flow, and that affects our ability to be in unity consciousness, which is one of our higher goals, right? I'm sure other speakers will be touching on that deeply in this series. So energy healing and architecture is a form of energy healing, I would say, in my practice. The way that conventional architects take it into consideration actually leaves us more healing work than we had at the start, in my experience.
Mhm.
But what we really need is a revolution in consciousness. And in order to become conscious, we have to feel like we can understand, to feel capable of understanding our relationship to the earth, who we are as individuals, why we're here. And it's really hard to do that when we're just struggling to survive and get our everyday needs met. So this this fortification and nourishment of our soul through our spaces is a great place to start with energy healing. And so that's to say that the environment that we're in is sort of our ground zero for energy healing work. And we can all do this in our homes today. We're all capable of putting out nice paintings or comfortable textiles or colors that resonate with us. And this is already beginning a healing process in our modern world today.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so inspiring. Well, you've mentioned permaculture a few times here, so I wanted to ask if you could speak a little bit more about that and what role does permaculture play in building the future that we know is possible, right?
Yes. Well, we've talked about how we can't really live in a home that makes us sick and live an extraordinary life. So if we live in a space with very little light and fresh air, we're going to get sick mentally, physically, and emotionally. And that's the scale of our homes. But think about many homes at the same level of health, creating the same types of dis-ease. And that's what our cities are, or our suburbs are for the most part. They're very large and sprawling. And governments haven't really been paying attention to managing land development in a lot of cases. And so farms end up being too far from where people are in order to deliver healthy and fresh foods to them in a way that's affordable and accessible. So we end up with things like food deserts. And Philadelphia is a great example of this. There are actually large swaths of the population of Philadelphia where people cannot access fresh food and they can only get packaged, processed food. And that's not sustainable. Anybody could see that. And that has a lot to do with poverty. So there's income and job issues. The economy is very much intertwined with this. But the cost and accessibility of healthy food, being that it's so expensive and inaccessible, makes it less in demand. And so the producers stop providing so many options because they need to support their businesses and their bottom lines. So this culture of permanence is not in effect in this case, where we are in a culture of we just need to survive and get our short-term needs met, which means I need a paycheck in 15 days and I don't really care what else. And so we have to create, that's where the spiritual aspect comes into play, because that's what helps us to say, no, this isn't enough. This isn't enough. There's more than my everyday survival, and we really want to thrive as a collective. And so we're all going to together commit to getting access to healthy fresh food. And what's that going to take? Is that going to take community gardens inside the city and getting neighbors together, and maybe the government or the municipality can support that initiative so that it's less of a burden on them, being that it will be a reciprocal relationship. And taking into consideration that that municipality has a lot of waste management needs, and perhaps they could combine their composting needs with the community's fresh food needs and stacking uses again. So more than just having agriculture, which is organic and natural, meaning that it doesn't take a lot of extra materials and work, which is generally the core of permaculture, I would say that it's also about nourishing ourselves in a spiritual and a physical and a mental way, so that emotionally as well, we are involved and engaged with our whole system as a culture. That's what I would say.
And I think this is, it's going to take huge amounts of creativity, right? Like this, like in Philadelphia and pockets of regions where there's no fresh produce available. To think beyond survival level could be extremely challenging, right? But when we can get really creative, think outside of the box and think about how can I actually survive even better or thrive because I'm bringing in this whole new way of approaching this problem. It's really powerful to think about what's possible there.
I think you touched on something really important, which is we're in survival mode, so many of us now, where we just can't think about anything better than what we're living in now. And that's where, for me, mindfulness and meditation comes in, because we all have to take individual responsibility for our emotional and mental well-being in order to be able to move beyond where we're at, which is crisis. And it's wonderful that we're all in crisis at the same time, because for so long, just certain groups of the population have been in crisis, emotionally and spiritually and even, physically, when it comes to things like chronic pain. And, there's this mental health crisis that we haven't been able to really talk about in a lot of ways. And now, because people are isolated in a forced sense on such a mass scale, now things like depression and anxiety are becoming everyday common topics. So is it sustainable for massive numbers of our population to be depressed? No, it's not. Because when people don't find meaning in their lives, they end them. And so we really need to be taking care of ourselves through this practice of deep looking, of going within. And for me, architecture is a reminder to do that. When I'm in a space that's bright and open and I can finally relax and my nervous system calms down, my parasympathetic nervous system kicks in and I can rest and digest, then I can start to get creative. And so if we want people to feel creative, we need to get good at calming down, at slowing down and stopping. So something that this crisis has brought as an opportunity is our chance to stop and to go within and to see what's there. And if there's a crying inner child that needs care, let's take care of her. If there are projects that want to be born and birthed, let's do that. Let's draw those things. Let's write those things. Let's put them out into the world. And it all comes from stopping. And our nervous systems are so dysregulated. We are just totally in fight, flight, flee, freeze, fawn. All of the trauma responses are getting triggered and activated. And you can look into, if you're interested on this topic, polyvagal theory is a great way to understand at a nervous system level what's happening to our society. And the thing is, we don't know how to stop and slow down. Our society hasn't given us spaces to do that in. We're always going from home to work and back to home and back to work. And there's this concept in urban planning and design called the third space, where we can go to that third space and just be. And so how much space, that's in a physical sense. It could be like a town square or a park, and how many of us have access to truly lively spaces like that. I haven't lived in many places where those spaces are available personally. And the ability to stop and slow down and just be in a physical space is one thing, but we can do that anywhere once we train ourselves. And so that's why I'm really passionate about teaching mindfulness meditation, because in my 13 years of practicing it, I have noticed a complete and radical transformation in my ability to be creative, to slow down and stop trying to survive and really thrive. So that's an example of sustainability as a relationship between not just our earth and us, but the buildings, which are kind of like the middleman between us and the earth. And it's really a non-negotiable relationship that we have with the earth. We have to find ways to slow down. And so that's why I offer this as a service to my community, because the thing is, we can't get to these changes in our society if we can't, like you said, slow down and be creative. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you for your comments and expertise on that. And I know your free gift is going to help our listeners with that quite a bit. So we'll get to that in just a minute.
Awesome.
I do want to really highlight what you said here about the our nervous systems and being able to get out of a survival mode, a survival mentality, just for for the individuals that affects, which is pretty much all of us, I believe, at this point. And also for us just as a collective, like you mentioned, what is the collective frequency of all of us being in this rush stress mode and survival mode all the time? It's really, it's quite mind-boggling to think about that, right? And as you mentioned, we're in this time of crisis. We're in this coronavirus pandemic right now. And so fascinating that it is forcing us to stop and slow down and just be at home and not be going all over the place all the time. So we need to definitely recognize the treasures inside of the challenges. And what is this asking of us, right? How is this asking us to change our patterns and how we're living?
Yes. It's fascinating because our current global climate has made it nearly impossible to plan for the future. At this point, we're not sure what's going to happen with the infection rates. We don't know how our global systems are going to have to respond in order to create a climate of prosperity and sustenance again. So from this place of threat, we're really forced to come back to the present moment, which in the practice of mindfulness is always the eternal goal, because the future's not here yet. The past is already gone. And so the only thing we really have is the present moment. So it's like we're all being given this magical opportunity to do this practice of coming to the present moment together. And when we unify as a collective in this singular focus of the present moment, amazing coherence happens. And you use that word frequency, I think, which is a really important one. And we're tuning into the subtle realms with that word. And what we're able to do at this time is to attune to sustainability within the self. As we are forced to be within our homes, we look around and we're really anxious and we have to figure out what to do with it. Maybe that anxiety has been with us our whole lives, but we've never been forced to actually look at it before. And now we're going to meditations, we're searching for help about how to deal with anxiety in a sustainable way. And so what we can do is attune to that and witness within ourselves the healing of the earth. So at this moment, the pollution in Beijing has radically decreased. The canals of Venice are finally clear. Dolphins are playing in them. Swans have returned. So we are witnessing a radical regeneration of our planetary ecosystems as we take the time to stop, slow down, and go within. There is so much power in that very simple practice of stopping. And for me, it's what mindfulness has always been about, because it's so hard, it's so hard just to slow down and stop sometimes.
Yes, so true, so true. And oh my gosh, yes to everything that you have just said. And I have been thinking about this so much. The skies clearing in cities in China and the water clearing in Venice. What more is possible if we can continue this globally?
Right.
It's incredible to think about that.
Right. I think there's a world that's in love with itself. I think that's what's possible. If we continue with this, if we can really slow down enough to witness how our impact affects the planet and take that to heart, really come from our heart center and say, look, I can see what my species has the ability to affect on the earth, and understand our interconnectedness, to take something as part of yourself. That's what love is. And so what I see as possible is a world that loves itself and isn't just committed to going ahead because it's what we've always done, and their expectations and this mental realm of distress and disease. We can leave that behind. We really can. It is within our power, and empowerment's what we're here to talk about, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And one more important thing I want to say as with all of this is that when we take our power and we consciously choose, we intentionally choose to slow down, there's even more power in that. Because right now we're being kind of forced to slow down, right? We're being given this example of, okay, here's what will happen if you all slow down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're being kind of forced into it. So what if we emerge from this choosing to slow down, even once the crisis has cleared, choosing that. And I believe many people will be living their lives very, very differently 6 months or 9 months or 12 months from now by choice.
Right. Yes, we can hope. And it is a choice. That the empowerment that we're here for is taking this responsibility for our choices. And it shows up in very simple things. You might be wondering, like, how can I create that change? Well, it's the little things. What's the first thing you think when you open your eyes in the morning? What's the first thing your hand goes for? And what are you consuming throughout the day? And how does that relate to your truth? What is your connection to your values? These are the ways that we can exercise this choice that you're describing. And that's the power of meditation, I believe, is it exercises this muscle. I've experienced that myself, that the more often we force ourselves to just stop and choose stillness and silence, the more comfortable it gets. And from there, that's where spirit really speaks to us.
Yes. Well, let's share about your free gift then, because I know you're offering a beautiful 3-week meditation journey. So would you like to say a few more words about that?
I would love to. Thank you for the invitation. So I'm offering this opportunity to connect with our true selves, because the world hasn't done a great job providing spaces for that, in my experience. So after our summit here concludes, you'll be able to receive an email and a meditation every day for 21 days. And we know that's enough time to create a new habit. So there are going to be a lot of different systems for supporting our ability to slow down, to go within, and to get creative in a space of stillness and silence. So this is like I said, a meditation practice. It's based on mindfulness of the present moment. And we'll be cultivating things like joy, equanimity, loving kindness, deep listening, looking within, observation. And I really hope that you can join me and us. It'll be a collective of people, and that always makes it a stronger and more resonant field. So all you have to do is deliver your email address on the website, and you'll receive all the support that you could ever want.
Yeah, and I think, well, especially in light of the intense times that we're in, and in light of everything you have shared in this interview, I think everybody should definitely go and claim that. It's going to be so supportive and so helpful. And so everybody listening, if you just scroll down a little bit below this video, you'll see where to click, and that will take you to the form to register for the 3-week meditation journey with Veronica. So thank you so much, Veronica, for all you have shared today. Is there any last bit of wisdom or last thing that your heart is longing to share with us today?
I just want to honor you for being present, dear listener. Thank you, Jocelyn, for creating this space for all of us. You and your team have done such a good job sensing into the collective and what's really needed right now as far as coming together, and just encourage everybody to center their lives around unity and love, because what else is there to do, and to make choices that are in alignment with our deepest truth. And if we all commit to that together, then we can experience radical change and empowerment in a short time. I believe it. Thank you.
I believe it too. Yes. All right. Thank you so much for all you've shared here.
Blessings.